I'm going to give you my easy step-by-step method to paint a beautiful glowing watercolor tree so that your trees can look more lively instead of patchy little messy blobs on your paper. Welcome to day 2 of the Watercolor Trees and Foliage Challenge, where we are painting together for 7 days and you're going to learn how to paint trees in all 4 seasons. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, and then at the end, you're going to tie all of the stuff that you learned together into a beautiful summer landscape. Now, this challenge is not just this YouTube tutorial playlist, it's actually a complete experience. So in order to get the full experience, make sure you sign up with the link in the description, because along with the tutorial series, you're also going to get a daily companion email series for that much needed accountability. And you'll also get reference photos, bonus tips, an updated supplies list in a companion workbook, all the good stuff. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to break apart the different elements of a tree, like the foliage, the tree trunk, the branches, and then I'm going to show you how to tie it all together to paint real easy watercolor trees. And this actually is the same technique I use when I'm painting trees as part of my landscape. So this is a recent plein air painting that I did, and as you can see, I've painted this tree, but it looks lifelike. There's lights and shadows being depicted over here, this atmosphere. But I achieved all of that by making the process really, really simple and not by making it complicated and by trying to paint every single leaf or every single branch and things like that. So this is going to be so awesome for you. Let's dive right in. What I'm going to teach you in this segment is how to break apart a tree into different elements. And so what we're going to do is we're going to first learn how to paint the canopy of a tree or a foliage. And then I'm going to teach you how to paint branches. And I'm going to teach you how to paint a tree trunk. I'm going to teach you how to paint lighter foliage and some of the techniques that I use to paint sparser foliage. And then in the next segment, what we're going to do is we're going to use all of these different things and we're going to put them all together into a tree like this one or this one. Okay, let's get started. When you paint a tree, you always need to have 3 different values in the foliage. For example, if you look at this tree over here, so what you want to do is in your foliage, you always want to have 3 different values: a lighter tone, a mid-tone green, and a dark tone green. So these 3 together will give your tree a lot of volume, depth, and dimension, because your tree is going to look like it has so much more character because of all the highlights, midtones, and the shadows. And the same goes for the tree trunk as well. If you take a look at, hold on a second, if you take a look at this tree trunk over here, because there's light falling on this tree trunk, and because we're going to be painting a nice summer tree in full sunshine, you can see that light is falling on this tree trunk here, and there's a lighter value over here, and there's a darker brown on these sides to indicate the shadow areas. And because of this, when you zoom out and you take a look at it, it looks so natural and so 3D. And this is the way how you create more depth in your elements as well as your landscape, by always thinking about where are my highlights and where are my shadows. Okay, let's get started. All right, so for my lightest tone, I'm going to use a May green, probably mixed with a bit of lemon yellow to make it just a little bit more lighter and more sun-kissed, if you will. And for my mid-tones, I'm going to use this olive green by White Nights. And then for my darkest shadows in the trees, for my darkest tone, I'm going to use this olive green by Old Holland. Now remember, again, if you don't have this color, just mix some sap green with some burnt umber and you'll have this deep dark green shade. Okay, let's take a look at the brush strokes and the techniques that we will be using while painting the foliage. So I'm going to be using a combination of dry brush technique and a controlled wet and wet technique. And for my brush strokes, what I want is to have a round brush and to make these like circular brush movements. For example, to paint the crown of a tree, like so over here, you need a generally curved inverted C shape to give it that nice, beautiful tree crown. So what I do is I get some paint on my brush. Okay, let me make some space here so you guys can see my palette as well. I want you guys to have as much information as possible to make this as easy as possible for you. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I get some May green paint on my brush. If there's any excess paint, dab some of it off on your paper towel. And then with one swift stroke, I'm going to go like this. So as you can see, because I used a dry brush technique, I got these like really beautiful rough edges as well as these white gaps in the foliage that just, you know, it looks like a tree foliage already. Okay, and then while this is wet, I'm going to bring in some sap green. Again, a controlled wet in wet, guys. The wetness in your brush should be less than the wetness on your paper. Then I'm just going to drop some of this sap green on the lower half of this foliage. And to finish it off, let's get a little bit of the Old Holland olive green, which is really dark and almost pasty kind of on my brush. Then I drop it here at the bottom. And there you have it. 3 different tones. And if I just bring in some burnt umber, and just real quick, if I draw in a little tree trunk here, you have a beautiful little tree. It really is as simple as that. Now this is, I mean, I just made a tree out of like a foliage part, but what we need to do is have little clumps of this. If you just put them all together, like I've done over here in this tree, if you put blocks of this in different parts of a tree, and then if you continue placing the light tones, the midtones, and the shadows in the right places, and then if you draw a nice tree trunk and connect everything, voila, you have a tree. So let's go ahead and do that, shall we? So what I want to do is I want to mix some May green with my lemon yellow over here, cadmium lemon yellow light, because I want it to look more warm, more sun-kissed. Now let's go ahead and paint the tree foliage again. Okay, be ready to practice with me. So one swift stroke, so press down your brush, and one swift stroke like this, another one like that here, and then without rinsing my brush off, because I don't need to, because these are all greens, I'm gonna pick up some olive green, drop it here, all the while keeping in mind that I'm really enjoying watching these colors spread. Now, of course, one thing that you do want to remember is to think about where your light source is from. So my light source, I want it to be from here on this side. So this side of the tree is going to be in a bit of darkness compared to this side. And oops, I should not have rinsed my brush, but anyway, let's bring in some of this darker green and just drop it at the base. So if I see this as like a clump of leaves, and I just need to drop it at the base here. And that's it. That's how you paint the foliage. Dry brush techniques, technique that gives me these wonderful rough edges that just, you know, without even me having to do any effort, I just get the little frilly edges around the canopy, and the wet in wet just gives me this beautiful blends and shadows and highlights. Okay, now let's move on to painting the tree trunk. Now the tree trunk, you want to make sure that it looks natural. I have found the hardest thing to teach in my workshops is tree trunks and tree branches, because do you remember how we used to paint tree trunks when we were kids? This is how we used to do it. Okay, I'm just gonna use the back of this paper to show you how we used to do it. So we used to kind of bring the tree trunk like this and then draw all the tree branches at right angles. And this tree kind of looks like it was, you know, outside of the Addams family house. But this is how we used to paint tree trunks. But we're not gonna aim for these like almost right angles of the tree branches. What we want is beautiful, graceful tree branches. So I think what might really help for you in this class is go outside and observe a tree. This is what I always tell. I mean, this is like the easiest subject, guys, because the inspiration is right outside your window, right outside your house. You're gonna find a tree where you'll be able to go and see just how the tree branches are protruding from the tree trunk. And most of the times, the way I make my trees look really natural is, okay, first let me get a lighter color for my highlights. So for that, I'm gonna mix my yellow ochre and just a little bit of burnt sienna. Okay, and now I'm gonna dilute this down because I want it as a highlight, so I don't want it super bright. So let me check this swatch here. Okay, this is perfect. So I'm gonna get some of that. And I am just going to use my brush, press it down, and then just pull it up thinner and thinner. So I am a big believer in putting as less effort as possible. So I like pressing my brush and pulling things up so I don't have to sit and, draw my elements with my brush, if you will. And then I'm just gonna pull off one branch here and then another branch here. Now make sure that when your branch is connecting to a main tree trunk or a main branch, make sure that it looks like it's growing out of it. You don't want your branch to just like pop out of here at a right angle. It shouldn't look like you've glued the branches together. It should look like they've grown naturally. Okay, so now that I have my highlight color, I'm going to pull some excess paint away because again, I want a controlled wet and wet. Now I'm going to bring my burnt umber. Now a thicker consistency of burnt umber on my brush. Dab any excess away from this on the paper towel. And now that I know that my light source is coming from this side, my shadows are going to fall on this end. So let's drop some shadow colors on the side here. And some shadow colors on here. Now again, pay attention to this branch. Of course, the shadow colors are going to be here. And then if you want to bring the three tones in the trunk as well, grab some Van Dyke brown, and at the very edge you can just drop some of the Van Dyke brown to give it even more depth and dimension. Okay, and if you want like a knot in the tree, you can drop a little bit of brown here as well. And it really is as simple as that. Now, because we're doing all of this wet and wet, if you don't use a controlled wet and wet for this, it's going to be very hard because the moment you drop your dark color, it's going to flood into your light color and it's all going to look the same color. So just practice wet and wet. Here, the simplest way to do that is, let me get some yellow ochre just to show you how to practice this. Just draw one line like that. Okay, don't make this super wet. If you think it's super wet, just pull some of the paint off. Okay, and then grab your burnt umber, just a thicker consistency of it, and drop it on one side. And if you still want to add a deeper shadow on this, so there you go. And another thing that I want to point out here in this segment is it really helps if you have granulating colors for some of these elements, because the granulation just adds such a natural texture to the elements. For example, over here in this tree trunk, if you focus on this detailing over here, you can see that because of the granulation, my god, it looks almost real. It looks so beautiful and real, and the texture of the paper paired with the granulation just looks fabulous. It makes it look so real, so 3D, without even me having to do any extra things to make it look like that. And that is the reason, my friends, why I love having granulating colors on my palette. Okay, next order of business, we're going to learn how to paint branches. Now, if you just want to paint a beautiful branch, you want to bring in your rigger brush, because trust me, my friends, once you use a rigger brush, you will know just how effortless it is to make natural looking branches. Because one of the most amazing properties of this brush is it has a mind of its own. The long length of its hair just makes this brush so dynamic. So I'm going to grab some burnt umber here, and what you want to do is you want to press the brush down and just pull it aside like this. And even if you get some like dry brushing here and some white gaps, don't cover it, just leave it. It looks so beautiful. And then you want to hold the brush towards the end of it and just start pulling the brush here and there. It makes some really thin lines as well, and I just love it. So that's how you paint a branch, just swift single strokes, but keeping in mind that it's still natural looking. Now if I want to draw a branch for this one over here to show the connectedness of this foliage and this foliage, I can just go here and just paint a few tree trunks, not a lot. We don't want to overdo this. And if you want to paint some protruding trunks over here, protruding branches, you can do that. You know, there's just so many ways that you can just use this magic brush. I love having a rigger brush on my in my set. My god, I could play with this all day. So practice swift branches. And also what you want to do is keep in mind the angle of between the two branches. You don't want to make the branches look right angle. You just want them sloping gracefully away from each other in tiny little variation between the angles. That's what I meant. Between the angles. Okay, so now that we've mastered how to paint the canopy, the foliage, the tree trunks, and the thinner branches, let's go ahead and put all of these pieces of puzzle together to make a beautiful summer tree. All right, let's get started. I have mixed some cadmium lemon yellow with some May green for my lightest tone here, and just gonna dive in. So I'm gonna first start off by the crown of the tree, and then keep adding like branches, and then come down, and I'm gonna keep a fairly kind of like oval shape, kind of triangle oval shape of the tree. So swift brush stroke for the crown, just keeping in mind just a general idea of what I want my tree to look like. Another canopy here, and then maybe another one here. We can connect both of these. Okay, now I realize that I'm overworking this, so I'm gonna stop overworking this because it's very, very easy to get carried away. Okay, now to get some olive green, a thicker consistency, and I'm just gonna add some of it on this side. Now again, my light source is coming from this end over here, so more shadow areas on this side. Okay, and some darker green. Drop it in the shadows here. Notice how I use the flat side of my brush to just lay in the shadows instead of going, no, that's just too much effort. I'm not a fan of putting in a lot of effort in my painting. Trying to make things as easy as possible. All right, job done. Gotta stop now. Remember guys, it's very, very important to stop. And now to make my tree look a little bit more natural, what I like doing is to sometimes include a slanted tree trunk like this. I feel like it just makes it look a bit more natural, and there's something lovely about having a tree trunk like this. So I'm gonna try and do that over here for this tree. So again, making sure that I have enough brown mixed for my tree trunk. Okay. Okay. So what you want to do is always make sure that your tree trunk is not too long. I mean, you can make your tree like that if you want, but I like having kind of shorter tree trunks because it makes my tree look aged and more beautiful. So this is my main tree trunk here. Let's bring in a branch like that over there. We can bring in another branch here and just include some branches here. Now, when you're painting branches, you want to make sure that everything looks connected. You don't want it to, you don't want there to be a disconnectedness between the different canopies. And then I'm going to bring in my rigger brush now. And what I love about a rigger brush is that it's very hard to pick in like a soppy wetness in this brush because it's not going to hold a ton of water in it. So I'm going to paint the shadow areas on this side. Mix some Van Dyke brown in here. Then we can have a few branches here as well. Now you can also add these branches wet on dry. And notice like when you leave these like white areas, there is an opportunity to add some finer branches here and there as well. So yeah, not too many branches though because I don't want it to look unnatural. But there you have it guys, just a very, very simple tree put together by very simple elements. And because we have all these highlights and shadows, it just looks so much more lively. Now, if you want to cast a lovely shadow, which you can, because this is just like a standalone tree, I'm going to bring in, a standalone study. I'm going to get some of my indigo, make it really watery, and then kind of pull the shadow from the base while touching the wet brown of the tree trunk. Now because my light source is from here, obviously my shadow is going to fall over here, so it's going to be a long shadow. And we can just make a few branches, dry brushing in the shadows as well. And that's it. It is really as simple as that, you guys. And I love how this has turned out, because what's going to happen is once this dries, you can see that some of the brown seeps into the shadow, and that speaks to reflected lights and shadows. So this makes it look like all the more natural. For example, it happened magically when I was painting this tree study here, and you can see when you notice the shadow here that some brown has seeped into this indigo. And what I really love is that even if a viewer does not know the technicality of it, if a viewer is looking at this tree, they're immediately gonna feel this tree is like more natural because of the reflected light of the brown into the shadow over here. Just an extra little nugget of watercolor awesomeness over here. But wait, before you go, your homework for today is to share your beautiful summer tree inside of the Blue Pine Arts Creative Club free Facebook group. This is a private community, so the link to this and the password will be inside of your companion email that has landed in your inbox if you signed up for the whole challenge experience. But really, this free Facebook group, it's filled with watercolor lovers and watercolor enthusiasts just like you. And I've intentionally curated to be an anti-perfectionist space where you can share your artwork, but you don't have to be stressed about likes and the algorithm and things like that. And also, the best news is all neurodivergent people are welcome in this group. So come on in, share, and sign up for the whole challenge experience so that you receive the companion emails as well as your companion workbook. All right, I will see you in the next segment. Until then, happy painting.